The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. Sorry, I was a little late to begin this. I had a little phone trouble logging in, but I feel like I'm connected now, and I think you can hear me. I see one more person logging in, so we'll give them a second, and then we'll begin. All right, well, we have a lot of material to cover in the hour, so I'd like to begin. This is the intermediate training, intermediate report designer training webinar. Today is November 20th, 2019. Well, my name is Eric Johnson, and I will be your Windward training facilitator today. I'm a technical support engineer here at Windward. I've been here a little over a year now. Actually, it's been over 2 years now. Well, welcome, everyone. Okay, you may have noticed that when you logged into the GoToMeeting webinar, you have a toolbar. The arrow that you see on the screen is pointing to the raise your hand icon. So if anytime during the webinar you have a question or are experiencing technical difficulties, please feel free to click that button to ask your question or notify me of anything that's wrong. The prompts I have for questions in chat are on my other screen, so I may not see your question immediately. Usually I wait until the Q&A session at the end to answer questions, but I'll look now and again to see if anything has been raised. Again, this is the Intermediate Designer Training webinar. So we're assuming that you've built some templates. They could have been very simple templates. We're assuming that you've installed Report Designer, that you know how to use the tags, that you know how to connect to your data sources. You know enough about the designer to get you started. And you may have joined us last week for the basic designer training webinar. Now, to give you an idea of the machine I'm working on today, I'm using Windows 10 operating system, which is 64-bit. I'm using Office 2016, also 64-bit. And the version of Report Designer that I'm using today is 16.2.0.188. We do have we have currently the current release is 16.6.0.104. I'm just in a training room today, and this computer hasn't been updated. But for what we'll see today, version 16.2 will show you the same things as version 16.6 will have. Okay, I want to give you a high-level overview of what we'll be discussing today. I'll go over some advanced for each features, showing you how to group with for each tags. We'll discuss conditional formatting, in which we'll cover two types of conditional formatting. One where we're showing and hiding content using designer tags, and a second type of conditional formatting that formats the output based on conditions. We'll also go over the equation editor, where I'll show you how to add a function to a template. We'll discuss the if and switch tags and what the differences are. I'll show you examples of the import tag, and of course, the Q&A session is at the very end. All right, so for the for each tag, let's review what it actually does. And it does three things. First thing it does is it grabs a set of data, any set of data that you want to pull from your data source. Next, it loops through that set of data that you selected to work with. And the third thing it does, it repeats all the elements between the beginning and ending for each tag. I'll show you the importance of where to place these beginning and ending for each tags, and I'll show you the results of placing these tags in different ways. We'll also get into grouping data or nesting for each tag, where I'll show you how to group your data with nested for each tags. Okay, we're now gonna move away from the PowerPoint presentation for a little bit, and I'm gonna go ahead and open up a blank Word document. It opened on my other screen, so let me just slide it over. Okay. All right, now that we have a blank Word document open, I'm going to go ahead and open up the Windward Tools tab. And to begin this webinar, we're going to look at some samples that are installed on your system when you install the Designer. So to access those samples within the Windward Tools tab, I'm going to click this Samples button, which is in this Getting Started Guide section. All right, and this opens up our Getting Started Guide. And down here in the Samples Templates section, under the Additional subgroup, we're going to take a look at the tag tutorials for SQL today. And the first sample I want to discuss is our for each tag sample. So I'm going to go ahead and locate it right here, and I'm going to click to open it. All right, now to begin with this for each tag sample, we're going to focus on this first sample right here. It is possible to use a for each tag without a table. Yes, it is, as you can see right here. And below this is a for each tag in a table. All right, so I'd like to point out a couple of things here with this example. The first thing is where you place the beginning and ending for each tags. And the second thing is why the placement is important when you loop through your data. Before we do anything else, I'm going to go ahead and select this for each tag. I'm going to come up to the Windward tab, and I'm going to click Preview, just so we can see that the data that we're working with. All right. So here, we're just returning everything from the categories table. We went over this categories table last week. We got the category ID, the category name, the description, and the picture. All right. So what is this alt tag next to the for each tag? What is this going to return? Let's go ahead and select it. Click Preview. All right, and this alt tag, we're just pulling the category IDs from the categories table. We have a bunch of numbers, 1 through 8. Okay, now what's this second alt tag doing? Let's go ahead and select it. Come up here and click Preview. All right, so this second alt tag is simply pulling the category name from the categories table. Here we got beverages, condiments, and so forth. Okay, and then we have our end for each tag below this section on the next line. So let's go ahead and show you what the output's going to look like. I'm going to click Output. All right, I'm going to split the screen. All right, and then the output on this right side, you'll notice that we're just showing the category ID, a dash, and the beverage, and the category name. In this case, it's beverages. And each one of these categories, beverages, condiments, confections, they're all ending up on a different line. Well, how is this actually happen? Why is it inserting the next record on a separate line? Well, the reason why is that we added our end for each tag right here on the very next line. So there's nothing after this second out tag right here, all this white space. Then the ending for each tag is on the next line. So you can more closely see what's happening. I'm going to go to the Home tab, and I'm going to turn on Show High Formatting. All right, now you can see that right after this last out tag is a paragraph marker. So that's what's happening, is that we're actually providing a carriage return after the out tag, so we can add the end for each tag just below it. Well, what happens if we took away this carriage return? I'm going to delete it, and we'll have the end for each tag right after the final out tag now. So now what will our output look like? Let's go ahead and close this one that's already open, and let's go ahead and generate another output. All right, let's split the screen. All right, and now our output looks very different. You still see the number 1, the dash, and then the category name, which is beverages. But now immediately after that category name, the second record starts, and there isn't even a space between the ending of the first record and the start of the second record. So you can see this over here. We have our out tag, our dash, our second out tag, and then after the out tag is our end for each tag without a space between the out or the end for each tag. So this is why it's lining up all on the same line for each record in this for each loop. It's telling Report Designer to go back and display the next category ID, the dash, and the category name right next to each other. Then when the output gets to the right margin, it simply goes on and continues on the next line. It'll do this across the page as well as down the page. So this is why the output is lining up on the exact same line for each one of these categories. It's because of where you place the end for each tag. Well, I'm going to go ahead and change this back right now. So I'm going to Control Z. And as you've just seen, it is important where you place the end for each tag. Everything between the for each tag and end for each tag, including carriage returns, are repeated with each iteration through the for each loop. Okay. Before we move on to our next example, I'd like to point out the tag tree button, which is located in the Windward tab over in the data section, this button right here, tag tree. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And as you can see over here on the right, it opens up our tag tree. And this tag tree is very helpful, especially when you're reviewing templates that you haven't seen before, and those templates may have many tags. So this lets me know all the tags that are in the template. I'm going to go ahead and expand main story. Now, main story is for the main document. If I had tags within the headers or the footers, these would display separately in a headers and footers section. But since we only have tags in the main story, in the main body of the template, we just see them right here in the main story. And now these are all the for each tags that are listed within this template. And then what I want to focus on right now is this last one, the customers loop. I'm going to go ahead and expand that. All right, and one thing I want to point out is to help you out when you're trying to locate a specific tag, you can go ahead and double click on any one of these tags within the tag tree to go directly to where that tag is in the template. So we're going to be focusing on this customers loop right here. So I'm going to go ahead and double click it. And when I do, we'll see the template move down to that page. And there we go. I'm now selected that tag that I double clicked here in the tag tree. So this just helps when you've never seen the tag before and you're trying to locate it. All right, let's go ahead and discuss the makeup of this customer loop for each tag. So here we have our outer for each loop, which is this customer loop right here. And there's also an inner for each loop, this for each tag right here. And this is where we're going to be talking about grouping. And then also we have in this loop right here, we have a company name alt tag that goes to this outer for each loop. We have another alt tag relating to the inner for each loop. Here's our end for each tag that relates to our inner for each loop. And here is another end for each tag, which relates to our outer for each or customers loop. Now, whenever you select a tag here in the tag tree, you may notice down beneath it, there's a properties window. And now in this window, you can change any of the properties that are for this specific for each tag. And you can even go in and look at the query and change that as well. So this just gives you a quick snapshot of what's happening with the tag, showing you the query and all the properties that are set. And this will be the same thing as opening up the more advanced tag editor. I just wanted to point out that you can see a snapshot of the tag here in the tag tree. Okay, so let's get back to the sample. So what is going on over here? So like I said, we have this outer for each loop, this customers loop, and we want to group some data based on the company name. So let's go ahead and preview the customer loop just to see the data that we're working with. With it selected, I'm going to click preview. And here, this for each tag is just bringing back the customer ID and company names, a bunch of companies that begin with the letter A. All right, next thing, between this beginning and ending for each tag is our company name alt tag. I'm going to select that and preview it to see what it's returning. And here, as it indicates, we're just going to display the company name. Okay, next thing that's in this sample is another for each tag, and this is our inner for each tag right here. So let's go ahead and preview this inner for each tag to see what it's going to display or what data it's returning. All right, and as you can see, this inner for each tag is bringing back all the order IDs that pertain to a specific customer, as well as it's bringing back a bunch of other data as well. So let's say that you have a list of companies and you want to see all the orders for each company name as it goes through the list. Well, this is exactly what I'm going to show you right here in this sample. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this alt tag, preview it. All right, and here we're simply just returning the order ID, nothing else. Even though we were bringing back a lot more information with this inner for each tag, we're simply just displaying the order ID. All right, before we move on any further, let's go ahead and take a look at the output to see what this section looks like. So I'm going to click output, say yes to save. I'll split the screen. I'll close the tag tree because we don't need that anymore right now. And I'm going to scroll all the way down to the sample we're talking about. Here we go. All right, so we have our loop over here in the template, and over here on the right, you can see the results of that loop. We have the number 1, the company name, and then all of the orders that's associated with that company name. Then the loop iterates and displays the next company name, its orders, and so on for each record within the outer for each loop. So now let's take a look at this number 1 in the list right here. See how it's repeating the number 1 for each one of these companies? So this is where we are grouping orders under specific names. Let's take a look at this setup a little more closely. I'm going to close this output right now. So how do we tie this inner for each loop to this outer customers for each loop? Well, before we do anything else, let's go ahead and look at this outer for each loop. So with it selected, I want to bring your attention to the variable name right here. And as you can see, it's var name 10. And the variable is just the name that the designer uses to reference this tag. So let's remember the customer loop, the outer for each loop, has the variable name of var name 10. So now I want to select this inner for each tag. And this time I'm going to go up here to the Windward tab, and I'm going to click the Wizard button. And this opens up our SQL Wizard. And here are all the columns that this inner for each loop is bringing back. I'm going to minimize this for the moment. So how do we tie this inner for each tag with the outer for each tag? Well, we do that here in the filter section right here. And you can see that it's already set up for you. So what we're doing is we're collecting the customer IDs from the orders table, and we're checking if it's equal to the value of the var name 10 customer ID. And now you remember var name 10 is the variable name for our outer customers loop. So we're having the customer ID of the orders table equal to the customer ID of a var name 10. So using the customer IDs, we can utilize these similar keys, and we can connect the inner for each loop with the outer for each loop. Now, if I was to click on this drop down that says, now if I click on this, expand it a little more. So all I did is I clicked on this var name 10 customer ID. And I want to click on that drop down. Okay, so this is our var name 10, and this is our inner for each loop. And then these are all the things that I can connect to. And of course, we're using customer ID. So that's what we have selected. And you can see over here in the data preview pane, there is that first customer ID, ALFKI, and all the orders that pertain to it. So this is how you connect your inner for each loop, this orders.customer ID, with the outer for each loop, var name 10 customer ID. Okay, I'll cancel out of this. I'm going to generate the output one more time. All right, I'm going to scroll all the way down to the sample we've been talking about. All right, right here. All right, now I want to give you a brief explanation of what is actually happening when we generate output with the engine. And each designer has a small .NET engine built into it. So what's happening is our engine is completely stripping out the data from the template, collecting that data, and then rebuilding from scratch, from top down, everything that's in your template. So the output shows the data that you wanted and displays it how you formatted it within your template. Okay, so what's happening here in the example is the designer is collecting all of the data from the customer's loop and all of the data from this inner for each loop. It ties it together, and then when it produces output, it says, okay, what's after this customer's loop? And the first thing that it comes across is that numbered list and the company name. Then what does it do? It sees the inner for each loop right here. So it grabs that data and displays the alt tag for this inner loop. It will do this for all the order IDs. It will just loop through this inner loop, displaying all the order IDs. And then when it gets to the end of the order ID, the next thing it comes across is our ending for each tag. And this simply just tells the designer to go back to the outer loop, collect the next record, and repeat the process, displaying the company name and all the order IDs. And once again, iterate back and display it while we have records to display. So this just gives you an idea of how our engine is tearing down your template and rebuilding it from scratch after pulling all your data from your data source. So this is how you group your data using nested for each loops. All right. Next thing I'd like to go over before leaving this sample is on the page above this one, right here. This nested for each loop example. So we've been creating for each tags using row-based formatting. We'll now go over how to use the for each tags for column-based expansion. So there are three things that are different when you want to create columns instead of rows. And the example up here is typical when creating a row-based for each loop. There's a for each tag within the table. It's going to loop through, displaying all of these alt tags. And then when it displays the last name alt tag, and as well as all of its formatting, it will then move on and see the end for each tag outside of the table. And this is typically what we want to do. We want typically to place the N for each tag outside of the table. But in this next example right here, our column-based example, our N for each tag is inside the table right there. Now, before we go any further, let's go ahead and preview the for each tag just to see the data that we're working with. So I'm going to go select that, click preview. All right, so it's just returning a list of categories, the category ID, category name, descriptions, and pictures. We're very familiar with this one by now. Okay, what is this alt tag going to display? Let's select it, click preview, and here it's simply just displaying the category name, beverages, condiments, and so forth. So instead of creating a list top down of all the category names, we're going to create columns left to right, running across the page. So let's go ahead and take a look at the output, see what it looks like. Split the page, split the screen, and let's go ahead and scroll down to our example right here. All right, here it is. So instead of creating a list top down of all these category names, we're creating columns that go left to right across the page. All right. Now, typically, when you place the N for each tag within a table, it should create a blank row at the very end of the list. And we do not see one right here. Well, let's look at why that is occurring. Close the output. All right, so there's a couple of ways to edit a tag. You can double click on any of the tags, or you can select the tag and click the edit tag button. I'm going to go ahead and click on this edit tag button with our N for each tag selected. And this just opens up our tag editor. So in the tag editor, there's two tabs. There's the query tab and the properties tab. Well, the N for each tag isn't used to really query anything. That's why this query tab is blank. The N for each tag is just used to tell the designer when to stop looping through the data and repeating the elements. But now, within this properties tab, I want to point out this delete row attribute right here. And this is already set to true. And so this delete row will suppress the row on output. So this is why we're not showing that last blank row, because we have delete row set to true. Now, what happens if I was to turn off or change this setting to false? I'm just going to go ahead and double click that, and we can now set to false. I'm going to save this update. So now what is our output going to look like? Let's see. Let's generate the output. Let's scroll all the way down to see our example. All right, and as you can see here, we now have a blank row after all the category names. We didn't have this blank row before, but we do now because we turned that property, the delete row property, for our N for each tag to false. All right, and the last thing that we need to do for column-based expansion is to change the property value for the for each tag to create columns instead of rows. So I'm going to go ahead and double click the for each tag. And here our tag editor opened up. And this window is a little more robust than the snapshot that we saw in the tag tree. In this screen, we have a preview button, so I can actually preview this query to see what's being returned, and as you can see here, we are returning the category information. To the right of it is the Wizard button, and just like the button on the Windward tab, you click this button to open the SQL Wizard. Next to it is the Equation button, which I'll show you a little later, and this can be used to add an equation to the tag. And then there's the Next and the Previous buttons, and these will take you to the respective tags without leaving the tag editor. So that could be handy if you're working with a few different tags. Over here on the left, just like the data bin, here's all the tables, views, and stored procedures we have access to. And over here on the right is our query tab. And now your query window in this query tab is probably white. Now, if you right-click on it and you choose color scheme, this is where you can change the look of this query tab. I have mine set at base 16 ocean dark. What is normal is plain, and that's probably what yours is right now. All right, but now if I click on this properties tab, this is where we set the column-based expansion for each tag. Now we have a bunch of different properties. Here we have some advanced properties for each tag. We have some standard properties. But I want to focus on right now in the tag section is this order property right here. And you'll notice that it's set to column. Now, if I were to click on this drop down, these are the different options that you can set for the order. Here, there's legacy, and legacy is what is used by default. And legacy isn't much different from row. It's just the original way we built the tag. There's the row attribute, and this row does a little more than the legacy. So if you want to delete a row with the end for each tag, you'll have to use this option. In Ohana knowledge base, there is more information on how legacy is different from row. So if you do want to take a look at that, please feel free to. But since we're expanded not by rows, but by columns, we'll want columns set for order, just like that. With columns set, I'll save the tag. And now, as you can see here, we generated the output all based on column expansion. All right, let's go ahead and change back this template. I'm going to go ahead and double click on our end for each tag. Opens our tag editor. I'm going to go to the properties tab. Change the delete row from false back to true. Let's save that. And now when I generate output, we should not see that extra blank row. Split the screen, scroll down. All right, there we go. Now we don't see that blank row. So 3 things for column-based expansion. First thing, you want to make sure that your for each tag is set to column, that your end for each tag is within the table, and the delete row attribute for that end for each tag is set to true. All right. Let's go back to our slides for a moment. All right, we talked about legacy, row, column for each types. We talked about the delete row attribute, which deletes the row where the end for each tag is placed. All right, well, we have over 50 equations or functions available for you to use. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of those right now. I have another sample template. that we're going to use to discuss this. Expand that. I'm going to turn off the show high formatting. It looks a little busy right now. All right, in this part of the webinar, we're going to add a sum function to create a total of the sales amount for a list of all of our salespeople. And you can see that we have a sales table already set up. Here's our sales for each loop. We have a couple of alt tags for the different columns, salesperson, call nums, leads generated, and sales amount. And then we have our end for each tag outside of the table. Now, before we do anything, let's go ahead and preview this sales loop for each tag. All right, and as you can see, it's returning the same thing that was showing in the alt tag, the salesperson, the calls numbers, the leads generated, and the sales amount. All right. Now, before we add the sum function to this template, I want to show you how to conditionally format text by displaying, let's say, red text for those salespeople who are not meeting their sales quota. Well, to do this, I'll go ahead and double click on the sales amount alt tag. This will open up our tag editor. And let's expand this var name 1. And var name 1 is just the variable name referring to this sales loop. And so here, okay. Excuse me 1 second. Okay. I'm going to open up the Properties tab right now. And in this tag section right here, let's expand this. There's this condition, and it's already set up for you. And when I selected it, you notice that there's some ellipsis here at the end. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And this opens up our conditional formatting rule manager. So whenever you add an equation or whenever you want to evaluate data, you want to begin that equation with an equal sign. And you can see it's done for us right here. Here's our equal sign. There's our $sign, squiggly bracket with var1.sales amount. So we'll pull in the sales amount from the var1, and the var1 is just for each loop, our sales for each loop. And we're checking if that sales amount is less than $8,000. All right, with our condition built, what happens if we want to format the sales amounts that are less than $8,000 in a specific way? Well, we can do that over here in the format field. If you know the formatting code, like you see right here, you can enter it in this field, or you could click on this wizard button. And this opens up our format options window. And here, for text, you can format it, the text, by italicizing it, bold, underline, strike through. You can change the text color. You can even change the text color on the background. And since we're working with tables, we also have a cell tab right here. And this is where you can change the border, the line style, the line color, cell color, or even the alignment. But since we only want to change the color of the text, we'll go back to the text tab. And for this example, we just wanted to change the color of the text to red for sales amounts less than $8,000. And as you can see, we have that entered in right here. And this is the hex code for the color red, FF0000. Unfortunately, we don't have a color palette right now. That's something that we want to add as an option. But for now, you'll have to use the hex codes if you want to change the color. And here, 2 Fs, 4 zeros represent red. So this is exactly what we want to do. We want to change the text to red when the condition is met. We click OK, and then here's the format right here. Now, if we wanted to, we could add a new rule. If we didn't need a rule, we could delete it. So this is all we want to do, just change the text color to red for those sales orders less than 8,000. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to save the tag. And let's go ahead and generate the output so we can see what this conditional formatting looks like. Say yes to save. All right, so you can see here that any sales amount that is less than $8,000 is displayed in red. There's a few of them. And those that are not 8,000 or less are displayed in black. So this is one way to conditionally format alt tags for output. I'm going to close this output for the moment. All right, now let's add a sum function to this table. Now, as I said earlier, we want to total up all the sales amounts in this table. So how do we do that? Well, we do this by adding a new row in our table underneath this data row right here. So I'm going to select this N for each tag, and I'm going to delete it. Next, I'm going to add a row by clicking this plus sign right here. And we're now going to do what I told you earlier that you shouldn't do when it comes to row-based templates. And this one is a row-based template because we're going to be moving top down when we create the output. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add our N for each tag inside the table. So I'll place my cursor right here in this row. I'll go up to the tags. I'm going to add an N for each. All right, let's go ahead and add some text. Give this row a label so that we can understand what we're going to display. Since we're going to display the sales amounts total, let's just go ahead and call this total. Now, let's format this a little more to help it stand out in our output. I'll go to Home. Let's go ahead and bold this, and let's right justify it. All right, now we want to add an alt tag right next to this total label underneath this sales amount. So I'm going to click on this column row right here. I'm going to go up to open up the Windward tab, click on the tags, and let's add an alt tag. All right, I want to go ahead and double click on this alt tag to open up the tag editor. And now from the tag editor, I'm going to click the equation button. And this opens up our equation window. In here, there's a bunch of different categories. There's date and math, date and time, math and trig, statistical, database, technological. Since we're going to be adding a sum function, I'm going to go ahead and choose math and trig. Now our functions are here in alphabetical order. Scroll down, select this sum function. And now when you select the function, you get a nice little description underneath it for you to understand what this function's purpose is. And here it's just going to add all the numbers in a range of values, exactly what we're looking for. So with that selected, I'm going to click OK. And this opens up a function arguments window. And here's our equation right now. We got our equal sign, which I mentioned that you always should start an equation with if you're going to evaluate something, and it's already done it for us. And then here's our sum function, and with nothing between the parentheses. So let's go ahead and add to this equation, and we're going to add what we want to sum up. So we can enter in what we want to sum up right here in this number 1 field. Well, you could also click on this wizard button, which I'll do right now. And this will just open up our SQL Select Wizard. And here we all have our tables and our views. And since we're dealing with the sales amount table, I'm going to go ahead and expand that. So we want to take the sales amount and total it up. Well, to do this, all you have to do is select the sales amount and drag it up here to the columns. Now you can see in the data preview pane, we have all our sales amounts, exactly what we wanted. So that's all we need to do is simply just drag the sales amount into this column section and click OK. All right, you'll now notice to the right of the number 1 field right here is our first value that's being returned. And down here is also a grand total. And the grand total is not formatted right now, but this is the grand total. And you can also see that our sum function now has data in it. And that data is pulling these, the sales amounts from our sales table. All right. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, this is the exact function we want to use. So I'm going to click OK. And here's our query that we built in the equation editor right here in our query tab. So with that built, I'm going to click Save. And the last thing that we want to do, since the alt tag is going to print out the number currency value, we want to format this data. So I'm going to select this alt tag right here. Come up here and click on the Format Data button. And then just like in Excel, we'll format that as a currency. We'll give it 2 decimal point places. Yep, we want negative numbers like that. This is the formatting we want, so we'll apply. We'll click Close. And let's go ahead and bold this value so it stands out a little more. So with my cursor on that alt tag, I'm going to go up here and click on the select tag to make sure we're selecting the whole tag. I'll go to Home, and let's bold it. All right. Now let's go ahead and generate output to see the results of adding up this sum function to the template. So I'm going to generate output. Say yes to save. All right, well, here's our table with our extra row right here. And since we added the end for each tag within the table, right here, it's giving us that last blank row. But we utilize that row by adding a grand total of the sales amounts. Okay, I think that was a good example of showing you how to conditionally format the text for certain values. So values less than 8 are in red, and also using a sum function, one of the many functions within our equation editor to display a grand total. All right, I see the time. I'm running a little late. I started a little late. Sorry about that. I had phone problems. I hope you stick with me. We got a couple more things to discuss. I'm all full with good knowledge of the use of the designer. All right, next thing I want to do is I want to go back and bring up another sample template. Let's go back to the samples. And okay, now I want to show you conditionally formatting using the if tags and the switch tags. Right now, let's go ahead and focus on the if tags. So I'm going to open up a sample right here. And this just gives you step-by-step instructions on how to use the if tag. So let's go ahead and take a look at this first example right here. The if, the out, and the end if. Now the if tag is perfect when you want to show or hide specific elements within your template based on some condition within your data. So let's go ahead and select this first if tag right there. And this is going to evaluate what's in this if tag. And if this if tag evaluates to true, then we're going to display everything between the beginning and ending if tag, which right now is just an alt tag. If this if tag evaluated to false, it would skip over everything from the beginning and ending if tag and display what comes next. Right now, it's just all this white space on this line. All right, let's go ahead and take a preview of this if tag. All right. So in this if tag, we're just evaluating if 1 is less than 2. This is a simple evaluation. Your templates will contain probably much more robust conditionals, but since 1 is less than 2, this is going to return true, what we see here. So this means that we're going to display this alt tag. If this returned false, then we would have skipped over this alt tag and got on to the next thing, which is on the next slide. Now let's take a look at the alt tag, see what we're actually going to display since this if tag does evaluate to true. With it selected, I'll click preview. So here it's just providing text that states 1 is less than 2. All right, let's generate the output, see what it looks like. Split the screen. And there it is right here. We're now displaying the simple text in blue that 1 is less than 2. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at the next example. Here, the output is indicating 3 is less than or equal to 4. Well, let's show you why this text is displaying. I'm going to select this if tag right here, and I want to preview it. All right, all we're doing here is simply evaluating, is 3 greater than 4? Of course, 3 is not greater than 4, so it evaluates to false. All right, since this if tag is evaluating to false, what the designer does is that it skips this first alt tag and moves to this else tag. And right now, after the else tag is just a simple alt tag, but this could be used to show or hide anything, large paragraphs, whole templates, anything you want. So it doesn't matter what comes between these beginning and ending if tags. We're just going to show or hide elements of your template based on the conditions that we're checking against. All right, since this if tag evaluates as false, if we were to preview this alt tag right here, after this alt tag, what does it display? And here you can see 3 is less than or equal to 4, exactly what we see in our output. So if this if tag were to be evaluated as true, this alt tag right here would display instead of it. Let's go ahead and preview it. And here it says 3 is greater than 4, what we don't see over here. And that's because this if condition came false and we skipped this alt tag and displayed what was after the else tag. All right, so that's the if tag. And you'll want to use the if tag if you have 1 or 2 conditions or choices that you want to evaluate. But what if you have 3 or more conditions that you want to evaluate too? Well, you can use nested if tags if you want, and you can see that right here. Here we have an if tag, an else tag, and here's our nested if tag with another else tag, and now we're closing both of the if tags. So this is an example of a nested if tag. But if you have 3 or more conditions, this can get a little long. And so what we would suggest instead of using if tags would be to use the switch case tags. So let's go ahead and close this output. Open up the Windward Tools tab, go back to the samples, and let's go ahead and talk about the switch case tags. All right, we have a couple different switch tags down here. I'm going to open up this second one. All right, so here we have another table containing what looks like customer information. Let's go ahead and preview this just to make sure. And here we are pulling in a bunch of information, all relating to customers. All right. Next to the customer for each loop, we're just going to display a bunch of data and alt tags. We'll display the first name, the last name, the address, the city, the state, the postal code. And then when we get over to this country column, this is where we're going to be talking about the switch case tags. And all the switch tag does is it just tells Designer when to start evaluating the case tags. So here is our beginning switch tag, and here is our ending switch tag. And our switch tags are just a little bit dark. I don't know if you can see, but they're a little darker so you can distinguish between the switch tags and then the case tags. All right, next to the switch tags is our case tags. And these case tags are just evaluating the country. So it's saying, is the country equal to Canada? If so, display this Canadian flag. Is the country equal to USA? If so, display the American flag, and so on. Well, let's take a look at the value that we're actually evaluating within this case tag. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that case tag, and it will open up our tag editor. There we go. So we have our equal sign because we're evaluating. And then there's the var name 1, and that just refers to our customer loop right here. And what we want to do is we want to look at the country region name. And we're seeing if that country region name is equal to Canada. If it is equal to Canada, then we're going to display the Canadian flag, like you see here. And then we'll do this for the rest of the countries. We'll check, is the record we're looking at, is the country equal to USA? If so, we'll display the American flag. If it's equal to Mexico, the Mexican. If it's equal to Australia, the Australian flag. And as soon as it meets one of these conditions, it will exit the switch tag. And then what it will do, it'll move on to the next item, which is our ending for each tag, and it'll loop through again, displaying all this customer information, and then evaluating, does the country of the record, is it Canada, USA, or one of these 4? And if so, it will display that flag. All right, let's go ahead and look at the output just to see what's going on here. All right, and you can see that our first record in the list is John Yang, and he has the Australian flag, as it looks like he belongs to the location that he's in the country of Australia. And as I scroll down, You can see that there are other people, Lauren Walker, with a Washington address, and she has the American flag. And you can see a whole bunch of different flags as it evaluates and displays the appropriate flag. So here we were just evaluating 4 cases. So there's 4 questions or conditions that we're asking. And then we're going to decide whether or not to show or hide certain values, these flags, based on the customer's country. All right, that's the switch case tag. And now there's one more that I want to go over. This one will be quick. Let's go ahead and close that. Let's go back to the Windward tools, open the samples. And now this time we're going to discuss the import tag. We have a bunch of different samples for you. There's the import tag, there's the import tag HTML and import tag image. We're going to do the import tag just because it gives us a little of everything. All right. And now this sample has a bunch of imports. Here we're importing an image. We're also going to import a PDF, a docx, a text, and an HTML page. Let's go ahead and take a look at the output just to see what these input tags are really importing. So let's generate the output. This is just the last example. This will go quickly. Just one thing I want to point out in this. That's taking a little longer than normal to generate. I think it's just because of the webinar we're on. All right, should open up. Okay, here we go. Yeah, that takes longer on the webinar than it does when I'm off it. All right, let me split the screen. All right, now over here on the right, first thing that we've imported is this image. And what you see here in the template is just the image preview. This is actually a tag. So if I double click this, you'll see that it will open up the tag editor. And here we're actually pulling in this image into the tag. So this is just an image preview, so you can see what the image is going to look like, the size, how it will be displayed in layout when we generate the output. But this is actually a tag. And the other thing I want to mention about input tags is you may notice that we are not importing any PDF file right here where there should be. And that's because in order to input PDF, you have to output to PDF. So if I was to output to PDF instead of outputting to docx, we would see the PDF import right here. But the PDF import does not display on a docx output. So anytime you're trying to import PDF, you must output to PDF. All right, let's go back to the slides. All right, I showed you the if tag and how it evaluates when it's true. It shows everything between the beginning and ending if tags. If you have multiple evaluations or conditions that you're trying to check against, let's say 3 or more, we suggest that you use the switch case tags. All right, you may want to take a screenshot of this if you can while you're on this slide. Here are some resources that you can utilize. There's the Windward User Center, which is located at windwardstudios.com/user-support-center. And here in this page, you'll find links to our knowledge resources, training videos, template libraries, and more. If you want to look up anything, You can do that within our knowledge base, which is ohana.windwardstudios.com. Or if you can't find what you're looking for, you can reach out to our amazing support team at support.windwardstudios.com. Or you can also send us an email at support.windwardstudios.com. So if you have a question that you can't find the answer to, go ahead and contact our support team. If you want to retrieve your license keys, you can do this at store.windward.net. If you want any changes or have any feature requests that you want to see added to the engines or the designer, you can do this at ideas.windward.net. All right, there's going to be a survey at the end of this webinar. Please feel free to fill it out truthfully. Any feedback that you can provide will help not only me, but any attendees of the next webinar. All right, well, I do want to thank you all for joining today. I hope you guys got a lot out of this, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Okay, good. Bye now.